Welcome to Momedharam. In this video, we will see the hierarchy of exceptions in Java. Object. Object is the superclass of all the classes in Java. Throwable. Throwable is a subclass of object class and superclass of error and exception. Exception. Exception is an abnormal condition that disturbs the normal flow of a program. Generally, exceptions occurred due to the programmers. If an exception occurred, we can able to handle that exceptions by using either try catch blocks or throws keyword. Error. Generally, errors will occur due to system resources. So, if an error occurred, we cannot able to handle them. Virtual machine error, linkage error, assertion error. These are all the subclasses of error class. Virtual machine error. This virtual machine error has around 5 subclasses. Those are like internal error, out of memory error, stack overflow error, unknown error, zip error. In this, out of memory error and stack overflow error are commonly known errors. Out of memory error. This error will come when there is no space in the heap memory. On some situations, the heap memory has a 256 MB, and when you try to assign the array more than 256 MB, that time we will get this out of memory error, stack overflow error. Consider a scenario, we have a Java class. In that two methods are there, like method 1 and method 2, and we are calling method 1 from method 2 and method 2 from method 1. From main method, when you call method 1 and when you run that program, we will get stack overflow error. These are all the subclasses of virtual machine error. Next, linkage error. In Java, around 15 subclasses are there for this linkage error. Abstract method error, bootstrap method error, class circularity error, class format error, illegal access error, incompatible class change error, no class def found error, no such field error, no such method error, etc. In this, no class def found error, no such field error, no such method error are commonly known errors. No class def found error. The class is available at the compile time and it is not available at the runtime. That time we will get this no class def found error. These are all the subclasses of linkage error. Assertion error. Assertion error is an error, and this error will occur when we are working on unit test cases. That time we will get this assertion error. Next, runtime exception. This runtime exception is a subclass of exception. Class cast exception, arithmetic exception, illegal argument exception, null pointer exception, index out of bounds exception. These are all the subclasses of runtime exception. Class cast exception. When we try to convert from one class to another class, that means if we try to convert incompatible types, that time we will get this class cast exception. Arithmetic exception. Divided by 0 is the best example for arithmetic exception. Illegal argument exception. In Java, there are 31 subclasses are there for this illegal argument exception. Those are like, we can say, illegal thread state exception, invalid open type exception, invalid parameter exception, invalid path exception, invalid stream exception, key already exists exception, missing format with exception, number format exception. These are all the subclasses of this illegal argument exception. Number format exception is commonly known illegal argument exception. Null pointer exception. If an object is pointing to the null reference and when we are performing operations on that null reference, that time we will get null pointer exceptions. Next is index out of bounds exception. Index out of bounds exception. It has around 4 subclasses in Java, that are array index out of bounds exception, class too large exception, method too large exception, string index out of bounds exception. These are all the subclasses of index out of bounds exception. Array index out of bounds exception. This exception we will get when the array has 5 elements, and when we try to access sixth element, and when we are trying to access a negative index array, that time also we will get this index out of bounds exception for array. Error and its all subclasses, and runtime exception and all its subclasses, all these are called as unchecked exceptions in Java. That means compiler won't know about all these things. So we can say these error and its subclasses, runtime and its subclasses are called as unchecked exceptions in Java. Next, SQL exception, interrupted exception, IO exception, parse exception. These are all the subclasses of exceptions, and we can call these exceptions are checked exceptions. So compiler know about these exceptions like SQL exception, interrupted exceptions, IO exception, parse exceptions are known to the compiler. SQL exception. There are around 20 subclasses are there for this SQL exception. When we are working with SQL related operations, that time we will get this SQL exception like batch update exception, data truncate exception, SQL client info exception, SQL feature not supported exception, SQL integrity constraint violation exception, SQL timeout exception, etc. are the subclasses of SQL exception. Next, interrupted exception. Interrupted exceptions will occur when we use object.wait, thread.sleep, thread.interrupt, thread.interrupted. These methods when we use that time we will get this interrupted exception. IO exception. In Java there are 110 subclasses are there for IO exceptions. When we are working with input output operations, that time we will get these IO exceptions. The commonly known IO exceptions are file not found exception, file system exception, file system loop exception, filter exception, FTP login exception, file already exists exception. These are all the IO exceptions. Parse exception. Parse exception is an exception which occurs when we are doing parsing operations. This is all about hierarchy of the exceptions in Java. Hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching.